Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with this lesson, which is going to include lesson 4.1 and 4.2 from your books. You should all have this worksheet in front of you right now, and we'll go ahead and get started. In addition to this worksheet, you're going to need a protractor and a pencil. So what I'd like you to do right now is with your protractor, go ahead and complete steps 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Go ahead and complete steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 in your groups, measuring the angles first and then having a discussion. So go ahead and press pause on the video player and then press play when you're ready to proceed. Okay, now after measuring angles A, B, C, and D, we should get about 47 degrees. You might have gotten 47 or 48 degrees for angle A, as well as for angle C. And if you get it 1 degree off or so from what I got, that's okay. So 47 or 48 degrees for those, and that would make angle B 133 degrees, and also angle D 133 degrees. Or, like I said, if you got 48 for angle A and C, then you should have gotten 132 for angles B and D. Notice that those have to add up to 180 degrees. So 47 degrees plus 137 equals 180 because they form a straight line. So a straight line is always 180 degrees. And so it makes sense that 47 plus 133 is equal to 180. Okay, so for now, you were supposed to focus on the angles that are across from each other, such as A and C. Those are called vertical angles. And do you see another pair of vertical angles in the diagram? The other pair is B and D. So we have two pairs of vertical angles. Those are the angles that are across from each other, and they share a vertex, but they're not adjacent to each other. They're across from each other. And so in step 4, you're supposed to write a conjecture related to what you observe about the vertical angles. Okay, so A and C, we'll focus just on those two right now. A and C obviously are the same. We measured both of them. They both turned out to be 47 degrees or 48 degrees. They are the same or congruent to each other. And so hopefully you wrote a conjecture something like this. When lines intersect the vertical angles are congruent. Something to that effect. You didn't have to use those same exact words, but I did want you to use the new term vertical angles. Okay, vertical angles are across from each other, and that is this is what we'll refer to for the rest of the year as the vertical angle theorem. You can think about how we might prove that. It is a theorem, so that means it has been proven. So you might want to think about how you might prove that. And in a few days, we will actually prove this, so you can see why it's a theorem. It's something we can prove algebraically. So you might want to think about it and see if you can figure out how to prove it on your own in the next day or two. Okay, so now we'll go on to step 5. This time we're not going to use our protractor. We're going to use what we know about vertical angles and linear pairs and so on in order to fill in the rest of this diagram. Okay, so as an example, I can find angle A because angle A and this angle down here are vertical angles. They are across from each other. They're formed by the same two lines, and they share a vertex. They, as we set up here, the vertical angle theorem says vertical angles are congruent. So if that's a 49-degree angle, I know that that's a 49-degree angle. Okay, and we also know that angles that form a straight line add up to 180 degrees. So go ahead and discuss in your groups how could you figure out any of the other missing angles that are in this diagram. So again, press pause on the video player and then press play after everybody's had a chance to discuss how to find angles A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, so again, we can get an easy vertical angle since angle B is across from the 37. That has to be a 37-degree angle also. Vertical angles are congruent. And then angle D, we can do the same thing. That angle and that angle are vertical angles. They have to be congruent, so now I know that angle D is 42 degrees as well. Unfortunately for E and C, we don't know either one at the moment, so we can't use the vertical angle theorem to get E and C, but we can use the fact that we have some straight lines, and we know that the angles completing this straight line have to add up to 180 degrees. So that means 49 plus 37 plus angle C plus 42 has to add up to 180 degrees. So now we can first add up the numbers that are on the right side. So 49 plus 37 plus 42, that is 128. So we have C plus 128 equals 180. And then we can subtract 128 from both sides, and we get C equals 52 degrees. So now we know C is 52 degrees, and E is a vertical angle with that. And so E would have to be 52 degrees as well. So now we have found all the missing angles in that diagram. Now let's go to the other side of your page. Here we have 8 different angles, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. So we're going to go ahead and start at step 1 again. So what I would like you to do in your groups is steps 1 and 2. So measure each angle using your protractor. So all 8 of the angles, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. And then make a list of all the pairs that are congruent. So if you see 2 angles that have the same measure, write them down. Go ahead and pause the video and start it after everybody's had about 5 minutes to measure all these angles. Okay, so hopefully everybody got measurements that were about 39 degrees for angle B. That makes this 141 because those two have to add up to 180. And then vertical angles, we get 39 degrees and 141. And then same thing in the lower diagram, we get 39, 141, 39, and 141. And again, if you're off by a degree or 2, that's okay. But we should at least get the same angles matching up. Okay, so our list for part 2, our list of pairs of angles that are congruent, there are quite a few. I know that angle A, for example, angle A is congruent to angle C. Angle A is congruent to angle H. Angle A is congruent to angle F. And so on. And then I can also do the same thing with angle B. Angle B is congruent to angle D. Angle B is congruent to angle E. Angle B is congruent to angle G. Okay, so we have those pairs. We also have some other pairs that I haven't listed yet. For example, G and E are congruent, and H and C are congruent, and so on. So I've only listed a few of the pairs. You should have an even longer list of all the angles that match up. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the terminology that we need in order to make some statements about these angles. So a transversal is a line that intersects 2 other lines. So I'm going to draw over top of this line in blue. I'm going to name that line T for transversal. Okay, and let's say this is line M and line N. Okay, so T is the transversal to lines M and N, because a transversal is a line that intersects two other lines. And when we have two lines in a transversal, we get some special pairs of angles that we're interested in. For example, alternate interior angles. So that means angles that are in between the two lines. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this word in light blue. Alternate interior angles, D and E are alternate interior angles. Okay, those are alternate, meaning they're on opposite sides of the transversal, and they're interior, meaning they are between these two lines. Okay, so they're alternate interior because they're on alternate sides of the transversal, and they're interior because they're between the two lines M and N. Okay, corresponding angle. Actually, let's back up a second. There's another pair of alternate interior angles. Have a quick discussion in your groups and see just 10 seconds. What is the other pair of alternate interior angles? Okay, so the other pair that you should have gotten is H and C are alternate interior angles also. They are on opposite sides of the transversal, and they are interior because they're in between the two lines M and N. Okay, so next we're going to look at corresponding angles. Corresponding angles I'll do in yellow. So corresponding angles are angles that are in the same relative position. So for example, angle A is, out of the four angles that it's near, it's the top left angle. So now look at angles H, E, F, and G down at the bottom. Out of those four, which one is the top left? It's H. So A and H are corresponding angles. So let's make a list here so we can keep track. Angle A with angle H. Okay, alternate interior, we said angle D with angle E, and also angle H with angle C. Okay, are there any other pairs of corresponding angles? Have that discussion in your group right now, about 30 seconds. See if you can list some more pairs of corresponding angles. So we have one pair here. See if you can list some other pairs of corresponding angles. Okay, so I'm going to look at angle B. Angle B is the top right out of these four angles, A, B, C, D. It's the top right. So top right here is angle E. So B and E are both in the same relative position. So B and E are corresponding angles. So there's another pair. Okay, another pair. Look at angle C. Angle C is in the lower right position. Lower right position down here is angle F. So angle C is in the same position as angle F. They are both lower right. So those are corresponding angles. And then the last pair is lower left. So D is lower left and G is lower left. So angle D with angle G, those are corresponding angles. So there are four pairs of corresponding angles altogether. There were only two pairs of alternate interior angles. Okay. The next definition, that's actually, let's see, I listed alternate interior twice. That should say alternate exterior. You probably already have that corrected on your worksheet, so that should say alternate exterior, just in case. So alternate exterior angles, there are two pairs of those. We're looking for angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal, but outside of lines M and N. So I'm going to use this pink highlighter. So alternate exterior angles. One such pair, A and F. They are on opposite sides of the transversal, and they are outside of lines M and N. They're not in between lines M and N, they're on the outside, so that's why they're called exterior. So one pair of exterior angles is angle A with angle F. Discuss in your groups where is another pair of alternate exterior angles. So angle B and angle G are opposite of each other. They're on opposite sides of the transversal, and they are exterior, meaning they're outside of lines M and N. So B and G are alternate exterior angles. Okay, so these are both alternate exterior. And then we've got one more type that I want to discuss, and I'm going to use a green highlighter for this. So same side interior angles. So these are interior, meaning they're in between lines M and N, and they're on the same side. So that would be, for example, angle C and angle E. Angle C and angle E are on the same side of the transversal, and they're interior, meaning they're in between lines M and N. So those angles are same side interior, and there's one more pair of same side interior. Go ahead and write down what you think that pair might be. So the other pair, D and H. Those are on the same side of the transversal. They're both on the left side of the transversal, and they're interior, meaning they're in between lines M and N. And so the other pair of same side interior angles is D and H. Angle D with angle H. Okay, same side interior, another term that's often used in books instead of same side interior sometimes are called consecutive interior angles. So same side interior or consecutive interior, those mean the same thing. Okay, so we have all the different types of pairs identified now. So what I'd like you to do is to try to write a conjecture in your groups for the different types of angles that we have. So you have a spot for 4 different conjectures on your worksheet. Go ahead and write some statements. Basically, they all start with when lines are parallel, such and such angles. So you might say when lines are parallel, and then make some statement about alternate interior angles. And then when lines are parallel, make some statement about corresponding angles, and so on and so on. And so see if you can write 4 different conjectures relating to alternate interior angles, corresponding angles, alternate exterior angles, and same side interior angles. So we have 4 conjectures for the 4 different types of angles. I'm going to have you go ahead and pause this video and then press play when you're ready to see the 4 conjectures. So now we can go ahead and we'll write down some statements here related to those 4 different types of angles. So one fact that I might say, when lines are parallel, that was the original statement up here at the top, when lines are parallel, alternate, or let's see, what was our first one? Yeah, alternate interior angles, those are going to be congruent. We see that in the diagram up above. So I'm going to go ahead and type these in down below where I've got a little bit more room. Okay, so my first statement is when lines are parallel, alternate interior angles are congruent. That's what we observe in the diagram. Alternate interior angles are congruent. I'll make that a little bit bigger. So next we want to make a statement about corresponding angles. So again, let's clean up this diagram a little bit. Corresponding angles are angles such as A and H. So A and H, and those both turned out to be the same. We said those were both 141 degrees. So also corresponding angles appear to be congruent when lines are parallel. So we'll say statement B, when lines are parallel, corresponding angles are congruent. Okay, and now let's look at a pair of alternate exterior angles. So that was, for example, A and F are alternate exterior. They are both 141 degrees. So those appear to be the same, so we'll make a similar statement about those. So when lines are parallel, statement C, when lines are parallel, alternate exterior angles are congruent. Okay, and then the last statement needs to relate to the consecutive interior angles. So again, we'll look at our drawing. Consecutive interior angles, we said C and E. C and E are consecutive interior. Now C was 141 degrees, but E was 39 degrees. So those are not equal. So we're not going to make a similar statement as we did for the first three. This time we need to recognize something else. Since they're not congruent, do they have a relationship? Look at those two numbers, 39 and 141. They're certainly not the same, but what relationship do they have? Discuss that in your groups for a few seconds. Okay, hopefully you realize that 39 and 141, those are supplementary angles. They add up to 180 degrees. And that is always going to be true. We see that on the other side. If we make this 39 and 141, those same side interior angles also add up to 180, and they always will for as long as the lines are parallel. So when lines are parallel, consecutive interior angles, which are also called same side interior angles, so same side interior angles are not congruent, they are supplementary. That means they add up to 180 degrees. Okay, and so now we have four very important statements that we can apply anytime we have parallel lines that are cut by a transversal. So that completes the lesson for today. You're going to go ahead and apply those facts to some various problems in the homework assignment. This video is also posted on my website under video lessons, and so if you need to go back and watch any of it again, it is there under the video lessons tab on my website.